Hello, my name is Andrew Swift and I am the Director of Medical Science and a partner at Isoforum, a leading medical animation, interactive and illustration company based in Ames, Iowa. I wanted to talk today about this incredible animation that was made by our star animator Jack Nelson, and show this to you real quick. And my role in this is to build the neuron and these dendritic spines, and that's what I want to go over today. Show you some of these, and then you can see that if you look carefully, you can see that they're not. Maybe you can't see it. It's pretty convincing, but they're not quite connected. You can't even really see it. I was thinking you'd be able to see it more. Regardless, I'm going to show you a very quick and easy way to build the skin of the neuron and the dendritic spines in ZBrush in a way that is really something you can art direct and have a lot of control over. Let me see here. Can you see where they don't connect? I can't really make it out. That's funny. I thought it would be more noticeable than that in the final. Because certainly in the model, you can kind of see it right there. Yeah, you can kind of see it right there with this dendritic spine. Regardless, it's a great effect and it's quite easy to do. So let's go ahead and get started. And that is the, let's see, I'm going to do that. All right, so this is, and this is not the exact neuron, this is something I made for the tutorial, but basically these are still done programmatically. So there's only one subtool in here. Well, there's another subtool, but it's not these dendritic spines. Those dendritic spines are applied with something called NanoMesh. And first, to do that, we're going to create an insert mesh brush. And that insert mesh brush looks like this. Polymesh 3D, and I've created these dendritic spine brushes, and so I can drag these out and then switch to another one and drag them out and switch to another one and drag them out, and you can see they're all coming out at more or less the same height. So we would need to change the size, because obviously that one is supposed to be much smaller to match that one over there. And I made a bunch of these, not knowing exactly how I would use them. So this brush, the size of these is dictated by the size of your brush. So if you drag out a small brush, now you're dragging out a small one. If you drag out a really big brush, you're going to drag out a really big one. And the depth is controlled by this slider right here. So you can change the depth and move it all the way up. You'll probably start to see the actual base. Yeah, see the base is slightly offset there. So you want to adjust this, and then, so that when you drag it out, you're getting exactly the depth that you want, so that it's just barely inserted. So let's take one of these and just look at it and figure out how we would do it. So let's do this, and then do that. Let's do this, and delete that. All right, so this is a single dendritic spine, and you could model this any way you want. I built these in ZBrush. But let's say we wanted to modify this. We don't like the way this is tapering off to this side like that. It looks sloppy. Looks like a medical illustrator wasn't doing his job. So we're going to straighten this up a little bit. Oh yeah, that looks good. And we're going to change some other things about this. We're going to, with the rotate tool active, I'm going to control, click, and drag towards the top of the bouton up here. And I'm going to hold down control on a PC. And I'm going to do, if you drag in, it'll do a normal move. And I'm not going to do that. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to scale this back down towards the base to bring it in line with the other ones in terms of size. All right. The other thing I need to do is I need to straighten this up so that the base is not right there. The base needs to be more or less in the center of the object. And I'll show you why once we get these things all put on there. But when you look at it in any view, and I'm going to rotate this a little bit this way. Yeah, so it's coming straight out of the bottom and more or less in the center. It'd probably be better if it was exactly in the center, but we're too far gone to do that. All right, so now we can create this as an insert mesh brush. Now, it will come out, the direction that you want it to come out is, I want to change this a little bit more. I want that to be facing, let's see here, I want this to face over here a little bit. Yeah, I like that. Yeah. All right, so that's a little bit different than our other insert mesh brush. Maybe we'll move this one out as well. And I'm just control clicking to drag. Oh, I didn't get a good mask there, so let's redo that. There we go. Yeah, right? So now we got something like that. All right, so now, yeah, our base is coming basically out of the center. That looks good. All right, so make the object face you like that, and then say B, create insert mesh, okay? And if we choose new, it will make a new brush, or we can say B, and then we need to make sure our dendritic spines brush is selected before we do that. So let's select our, there we go, dendritic spine is selected. Now we'll hit B and say create insert mesh, and I'm going to append it. And so basically what you see up here at the top, it's going to add another one of these up here. And you can delete these as well, and I'll show you how to do that. Append. And it will say, press the M key while an insert mesh brush is active. It'll allow you to see it. And you say, okay. So if I hit M, these are all my insert mesh brushes, and this is the one we just made. And this is the one that was probably derived on one of those. All right, so now we've done that. And so now, if we had a sphere, which was editable, we could come along and just do this and, you know, place them all one at a time. The trick is that rather than doing that, we could make this a NanoMesh brush. Instead of create insert mesh, see we've got these already selected. Create NanoMesh brush right over here. And a NanoMesh brush is created from an insert mesh brush. It took me a while to figure that out. And a NanoMesh brush is essentially a Z-modeler brush, which is using existing geometry upon an object. And so if we go over here now, we're going to insert it using a NanoMesh brush. Now, initially that doesn't look exactly the same in one main way, which is there's no polygroup. And there's no polygroup because it's still parametric. It's still controlled by the dialog for NanoMesh. Now, rather than having just a single one, we could say polygroup island, and I'll show you why we're going to do that. So you could have a group of polygons like this, right? And now what it's going to do, yeah, that's what we want. So let's say we wanted that. We wanted to insert them there. We would hover over a polygon, not over an edge or a point, and say polygroup all. Insert NanoMesh, polygroup all. We've got our little thing selected here. So now when we click and drag, it's going to do that. It's going to send them all out. A couple of things. First of all, we can adjust the size very easily. The other thing we can do is we can change the, we can give it a little variety. We could do 30 or 26, 26, 26, right? And so now we've got a little bit of variety. And more than that, we can change the Z rotation, give it a little rotation. This is a 180-degree rotation. And we're going to change the change it there. Yeah, and so now we're going to, oh, it undid it. Okay, so change this a little bit. I should be more exact about to put exact numbers in there and change this. All right, so now we've got that, and I just adjusted the depth so they were coming out too shallow. You might be able to do that. I guess I could have offset it here as well. I could have done a Z offset. Yeah, I could have done it a Z offset here and done that same thing. Huh. All right, live and learn. The other thing, and this is the one you're going to use the most, is the random distribution. And so now we're going through and saying, okay, I want a random distribution on that polygonal selection like that, right? Now, you probably wouldn't be doing it. That already looks pretty good, right? We turn that off. You can imagine how we could do that to a shape of a neuron. Let's go get a more simple neuron that we have here. Well, let's look at this one. This is a good one. And so that's all I did here was I would come over here and drag these out and then get the NanoMesh thing and say random distribution. And I'd change the size. I have a lot of control over this. And you can imagine how you can go about creating something that's really quite complex very easily. And the reason you want that base to come out right in the center is that some of the ones out here with this really thin polygon, you can imagine that the size of this is crucial. And it's, move it out like that. That's because the reason it's offset here is that this base is not entirely perfectly under the geometric center of that particular insert mesh brush, so it's slightly off. And what I would do is probably not worry about it. If we wanted to then add, the truth is, at the very end, what I would do is go through and look for outliers and delete them. I would select them and delete them, and I'll show you that in a second. So let's say we now, and again, these are all parametric, right? So I'm going to say freeze placement, and I can go back to one of the other, I can add more, let's do that. Let's add a simple dendritic spine that comes out like this. Let's do the same thing here. So this is just going to be a single one. We'll do random distribution, make the size larger, and you can, it's subtle, but there's no variety in their rotation. And so we want them to have some variety in their rotation, and that'll help. They really will. You can also lean them. You can change the X and the Y, just give it a very slight rotation. Let's see here, a couple of degrees. And there was a project that I did where this made a big difference, and you change the variability here, and now it's starting to look a lot more organic, a lot more rich, right? Let's see here, randomly maybe have fewer of these, and it'll, it's a really powerful thing because it's doing it programmatically. You can have a bunch of them. Let's get our size variety going. Let's set this to 25, 25, 25. Yeah, so that's looking pretty good, and that's it. So then you would do freeze placement, and now we have each of these, and we can come back here and adjust each one of them by itself, right? Oh, let's see here, go back here. What did I do? I deleted it by accident. What did I do? Yeah. Oh, and you can also edit that mesh. You can come in here, and this is the mesh for each of that. And so you can control drag, for instance, that thing that I did before. Watch both of these. I'm going to rotate it, and then I'll just rotate it back and forth, and you can see what it's doing. It's rotating all of them. Isn't that cool? You have a tremendous amount of control over this. I'm not getting the freeze placement exactly right. Regardless, in general, I don't mess with that a whole bunch, and I get this correct, and then I would do, so we've already done freeze placement, so now we're ready to add another one. So if we come in here, and this may break it, but I'm going to add just a single bouton this time. So I had rotate done, and so what it did was it swapped out the original mesh for this bouton, and I don't want to do that. So go back to draw, and now we're drawing with the insert mesh brush. Just to be clear, when you have the rotate, smooth, scale, or move function, and you select an insert mesh brush, it will swap your current subtool for whichever one is selected. So you don't really want to do that. So come back over here and click and drag out this single bouton like this. Get it about the right size. Again, you could adjust this in the final, but you don't really need to. And then random distribution again, and something like that. All right, that's starting to look really like a neuron. I mean, and they're this complex, they are. And so let's see here. Yeah, so we'll just do freeze placement, and then we're all set. So we've made, look at this thing. It's just incredibly complex. I think in the final we decided to have fewer than that. So let me turn off freeze placement and see if I can change. Yeah, I can change it there. I'm not sure why I couldn't change the other one. Freeze placement, go back down to 2. Yeah, it deletes it for some reason. I'm not sure why that is. Interesting. I would have thought I could unfreeze that and continue to work on it. Oh. Huh. So maybe freeze placement is just about keeping it, so it's still editable, so I can still edit it, right? I can change the rotations and everything. I can adjust these. Yeah, on all of them. Oh, that's interesting. Okay, well, now we know that. Let's say, so here, that's a great example. So this one ends up being a little bit small, I think, so let's make it a little bigger. Yeah, it just makes it bigger in place. And I'm going to have to go delete some of those ones from out here on the ends where they're not really matching up properly. That's pretty much it. Isn't that neat? And so then when you want these because right now, again, if you turn on polyframe, these are not actual geometry. These are done programmatically. They're fairly low resolution, so all we have to do is go to each index and say 1 to mesh. That makes those editable. And we'll go to the next one. one to mesh. And each time we're losing from our index because those are editable. They're now actual geometry. They're not in the NanoMesh palette anymore. And we'll do one to mesh. And then one to mesh. And that gives us all of our topology as actual topology. And these are the different colored groups. So we could select these and still act on them. So you could mask them. I'm going to hide the mask. I hide the mask because and it's Control H, or I set it up that way to be Control H. And the reason you would want to hide the mask is that it allows you to see what you're doing as you're doing it. And basically here, what I was wondering is, could we inflate this very slightly? So you could inflate these. You could do a balloon inflate. It's kind of cool, actually. Anyhow, I wanted to show you could act upon those independently. And I think that's it. And now this would be ready to go into, this would, in our workflow, this would be ready to go to the team for animation. You can see up here in this. I don't use this a whole lot, but you do get kind of a good impression of, how complex this is by looking at this thumbnail up here. So that's it. I hope that was useful. Again, we are a medical illustration, animation, and interactive company named Isoform. We're based in Ames, Iowa, and if you have a project, we'd love to hear from you. Thank you.